What's going on, you guys? It's your boy Patrick, aka Addicted to Combat, back for another week of Best Bets and Props, where I go over all of my bets placed for this weekend's UFC action at UFC Orlando, UFC Fight Night Thompson versus Holland in a potential 5-round welterweight bout. 15 fights remain on this card right now on Friday night, and I am super nervous for the weigh-ins because I can't remember the last time there was a card with 15 fights that actually stayed intact. Off the top of my head, I think it was Israel Adesanya versus Jan Blachowicz. I think that was last year, like at the end of the COVID era when they were stacking cards with a lot of fighters, expecting a lot of them to test positive and fall off. But I think that was a miraculous night where they all stayed and we had 15 fights. There might have been one this year. Maybe I'm tripping, but I think 14 is the most we've gotten in a while. Hope we keep all 15. Hope they all, stay intact so that our bets are intact. I've got a lot of bets, so if there's a fight canceled, one of these will probably be affected. I've got a lot of time props, a lot of long shot parlays, one main parlay in general. I may do a progressive parlay pending the weigh-ins, and I also have a few money lines as well. Again, as usual, I will try to make this brief for the Best Bets and Props video. So if you want more detail on the picks and reasoning, I broke down all 15 fights in my full card breakdown, as I always do on Sunday night. And I also had, moments ago, I had a live stream with my guy, Blood Money MMA Bets, Cody, and we went over all of our bets and our feelings about each of these fights. 2-hour-long stream. I timestamped it for your convenience. It was an epic stream. Cody's very knowledgeable, and we always have a good time. So check that out for details. Also, check out BetUS Sportsbook, who I'm partnered with. Use Addicted to Combat 125 as a promo code, and you will get a 125% deposit bonus match from $100 all the way up to $2,500. Free money to bet with, and just an extra sportsbook in your arsenal. Want all the options you possibly can have. So let's break into the first bet I'll talk about, which is a 3-leg parlay. The main event fighter, Kevin Holland, to get the W here, parlayed with Rafael dos Anjos in the co-main event against Brian Barberena, and also Jonathan Pierce against Darren Elkins in the prelims. So this is 2.5 units of a wager, plus 175 combined parlay odds. Got Kevin Holland around minus 125, RDA minus 400-ish, and minus 400-ish for Jonathan Pierce as well. Plus 175 combined parlay odds, 2 of the biggest betting favorites on the card, and Kevin Holland. So Kevin Holland, to start this off, 9 years younger, finally the much bigger guy in this matchup. I say finally because Stephen Thompson has not fought a lot of people bigger than him. So this will be finally a spot where Stephen Thompson's the much smaller man here, giving up about a half a foot or more of reach. And that reach is crucial for at least Stephen Thompson to work his karate game. That low, hands down, relaxed style, big in and out, pull counters, and at 39 years old for Stephen Thompson, almost 40, that game of keeping your hands down is going to catch up with him eventually, and I think it does catch up to him with a power puncher, unorthodox, explosive guy like Kevin Holland. So this will be largely a striking match. I could see Kevin Holland using some of the clinch work, and he does have a good BJJ game. I don't think we see it here. I think it's largely striking. Who has the bigger moments, who does the most damage, and who is the more dangerous guy to potentially end the fight? I think that all is Kevin Holland, the younger man, again, by almost a decade here. Now, I don't think that Kevin Holland's only path to victory is inside the distance. He does have 19 of his 23 wins inside the distance by finish. Stephen Thompson only been finished 1 time, so you can't always bank on that being his only route to victory. I can see him winning getting the better strikes off in 3 of the 5 rounds. I could see that happening for Kevin Holland. But I do like the alternate overs in this fight. The over 2.5 rounds at minus 135, the over 3.5 rounds at plus 105, and the over 4.5 rounds, almost expecting this to go to decision, plus 135 for the over 4.5. So these alternate totals, quarter unit apiece on those, I like a lot, because Kevin Holland could easily lose this fight by, a close decision as well, right? He could get outpointed. It could be a close fight. If it's striker versus striker, and both of these guys great strikers, it could play out close. So that's kind of to back up the win condition for Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Most likely he's not going to finish this fight. He has not knocked anybody out in a long, long time. So I think that would cover his path to victory by decision. Kevin Holland, it would also cover him, not landing that knockout strike that is, not easy to get on Stephen Thompson. But I do think Kevin Holland is the rightful favorite here as the younger guy. RDA has this fight pretty much covered everywhere against Bryan Barberena, even though RDA is, in this case, he's the older man by about 5 years. But Bryan Barberena seems to have a lot of damage inflicted. He had some career-threatening injuries not too long ago as well. And RDA is still, even at 170 where this fight is at, RDA is the former 155-pound champion. He's elite against 170-pounders, 155-pounders, the catch weights in between. I mean, the guy wrestles everybody successfully unless you're a super elite wrestler like, a Colby Covington or somebody like that. I mean, to average 2 takedowns per 15 minutes since 2008 is insane for RDA, but I think he could also stand and bang and strike against Bryan Barberena successfully over 3 rounds as well, but hopefully he does not choose that, as that would be the only path to victory for Bryan Barberena. So, yeah, Bryan Barberena has been fighting older guys the past 2 fights. A very close split decision win over Matt Brown earlier this year. He was lucky to get that decision, and of course he knocked out in a competitive fight, but he knocked out Robbie Lawler by TKO stoppage in July, I believe. So he's looking to take out another legend here in RDA. I don't think it happens. Biggest favorite of the card currently is RDA. No surprise on this pick, but I'm confident in him. Most confident fighter on the card. And my second most confident, Jonathan Pierce, JSP. Again, very huge betting favorite on this card over Darren Elkins, a guy who is much older than him at 38, almost 39 years old, I believe, for Darren Elkins, who's been in the UFC for a long time, and his best attribute is certainly his durability and his toughness. He's able to get the crap beat out of him for much of the fight. Once his opponent slows down, Darren Elkins can work some wrestling. He can just display better cardio and work ethic in the fight and either win the fight by stoppage or come out the victor by a close decision. Darren Elkins, I think the durability is now fading. As we saw, he got knocked out in round 1. It looked very lethargic and out of place and chinny almost in that fight against Cub Swanson last year. Since then, he did bounce back with a win, a competitive decision win over Tristan Connolly. Connolly, not UFC tier, no longer in the promotion, not the guy he once was, and he's even losing fights in the regional scene now is Tristan Connolly. So a win over him for Darren Elkins does not show me very much. I like JSP to win this fight. He's going to be the superior, more physical athlete here as far as the grappling goes. JSP has been very good. He's a workhorse. And the striking as well. Darren Elkins, not the striker he once was, looks very hesitant and awkward these days on the feet. So, again, another spot where I think Pierce has got him covered everywhere. Give me JSP to hopefully conserve his ammo in this fight as far as not going for broke early, but, putting on a pace. I do expect Pierce could end this inside the distance and win. So those 3 guys, Holland, RDA, Jonathan Pierce, plus 175 combined parlay odds, 2.5 units wagered. I gave out the overs for the Kevin Holland Thompson fight. Moving on to some money lines, I have 3. Emily Ducote, 1.2 units to win, 1 at minus 120 on her money line over Angela Hill. Now, this is another almost decade-year age discrepancy in the favor of Emily Ducote. Emily Ducote is going to be the better grappler in this matchup. Should she choose to take the fight there, I'm not sure if she will. Hope she does, but otherwise this will be a striker versus striker matchup with Angela Hill. Emily Ducote has the fight-ending power and the respect-earning striking power in this fight. Angela Hill does not. Never knocks anybody out, but she is a very slick mover, is Angela Hill, with 20 more UFC fights worth of experience at women's strawweight here. So all of the experience in the favor of Angela Hill. She keeps her fights close. Her record indicates that with, I believe, a 14-12 record. So, and most of those are in the UFC, right? So, half of the women are able to best her and show that they can advance in the division. Half of them are not, and Angela Hill can beat them. I think Emily Ducote coming out of Invicta and Bellator and now showing that she has not only fight-ending power, but she's got cardio to go 15 minutes and strike the whole time, high volume, and she's making improvements, looking very technical. Give me Emily Ducote here to win this fight. Not a lot invested on her, right? Only a minus 120, 1.2 units to win 1. I'll take that despite what I normally favor, which is experience. So moving on to an underdog here, Phil Rowe, plus 120 on the money line, 1 unit to win 1.2 over Nico Price. Kind of similar to the last fight I just talked about, right? Nico Price does have the UFC experience. He also has obtained a lot more damage. Phil Rowe, not that much younger than Nico Price. I think maybe a year or 2 age discrepancy in the favor of Phil Rowe, but nothing groundbreaking here at 170. Phil Rowe's just going to be the bigger guy, long, rangy, kind of like Kevin Holland at 170, right? 80-inch reach, 6'3" for Phil Rowe. And the guy has had a little bit of an issue in his past few fights with losing round one. I wouldn't mind anybody taking Phil Rowe if they got a nice big number after round one. You could wait, but you'd have to have quite a big number, right? Because Nico Price not one to necessarily quit or give up as the fight goes on. So I'd probably want plus 220-ish. Up to plus 250 if Phil Rowe loses round one, and then you get that live number on him after round one. Maybe I'll play it that way, maybe not if I see those numbers when I'm watching the fight. But I've got 1 unit plus 120 Phil Rowe to play the sniper in this sniper versus zombie matchup, right? Nico Price being the zombie, lumbering forward with his terrible striking defense. I think he's giving up like over 5 significant strikes absorbed per minute on average, and he's had a handful of UFC fights at this point. Negative striking differential. The guy's exciting, but that's why he's exciting. He goes, lumbers forward with no regard for his own safety. He could take down Phil Rowe in round one. He could clinch up with him at least. I'm sure Phil Rowe is advancing as the newer guy in the UFC, improving, and after getting taken down in round one, both of his previous fights, and then coming back, showing resolve and getting a knockout in round two, hoping Phil Rowe just really works on that defensive grappling as far as the wrestling defense and comes out improved. Doesn't even give Nico that opportunity early. So give me Phil Rowe. He could end the fight or win by decision, most likely winning rounds 2 and rounds 3. My next favorite money line here, my favorite, and of course no surprise there. If it's my favorite, I've got the most invested, 2.5 units at minus 155 in the money line for Jack Hermansson at 185 to beat the short notice replacement for Derek Brunson. This is Roman Dolidze stepping in on short notice. And Dolidze's been on a nice little knockout streak here, knocking out in 1 minute. Kyle Daukaus knocking out in round one after tearing up his knee. Phil Hawes, just like maybe a month or so ago. He's coming back on short notice. I like the fast activity, the eagerness to get in there, and I do like the aggression of Roman Dolidze, but let's face it, he's got the power in his hands, he's got some grappling, but Jack Hermansson has got all the UFC experience, 5-round experience, he's faced big power punchers and big submission threats and come out as the victor in these fights. Jack Hermansson, minus 155 for this guy who's been preparing for a strong wrestling threat in Derek Brunson, and Hermansson just showed that he has improved striking over at UFC London earlier this summer. He beat decidedly by 3 rounds Chris Curtis, and he didn't grapple to do it like you would expect somebody to do with Chris Curtis. He kept it on the feet and outstruck him, looked super loose, throwing all sorts of strikes that were mixing up the targets and frustrating Chris Curtis, all while being evasive and moving backwards. So I love Jack Hermansson in this spot. Like I said, 2.5 units at minus 155. I like that. Now moving on to some props here. I do have 3 time props and then 2 additional props as well, some more long shot ones. Overs and unders. Let's start with these. Natan Levy versus Gennaro Valdez. 145-pound bout. I got the under 2.5 here. Just 1 unit at minus 155 for this fight, not to go past 2.5 rounds. You've got Natan Levy, pretty new to the UFC, long, rangy striker with BJJ fight-ending potential with the submissions. Now, Gennaro Valdez, really why I like this under is he's never seen the scorecards. The guy's never been to the judges' scorecards before. Out of his, I believe he's got 10 professional wins, 1 loss, which was his most recent debut loss by knockout in round 1. 9 of his 10 losses for Gennaro Valdez have come under 1.5 rounds. And, of course, his only loss we just saw to Matt Frivola. He got destroyed in round 1. So that, of course, was under 1.5 as well. The guy can barely make it past 1.5 rounds here, much less 2.5, where I've got the under. So at minus 155, I did beat the line movement sort of unintentionally. I wasn't that confident in a featherweight fight between 2 guys I've got a lot to learn about. I'm not too scared about Natan Levy not making it to the scorecards. So this is kind of a one-sided bet, in my opinion, on Valdez to either finish the fight early with his crazy pace or fade and not make it even past 1.5 rounds. So I just put 1 unit on that, but I got a very good price on it. I believe that's south of minus 200-ish now for the under 2.5. Next up, time prop. This is going to be an over this time. The over 1.5 in the Francis Marcelo Rojo fight at 155. Marshall, of course, being a very good wrestler, looks to be this undefeated prodigy coming off the Dana White Contender Series, where he had a decision win, very dominant one, 6 takedowns. He trains under Kurt Pellegrino. He's been training since I think 14 years old or so under a former UFC fighter. Making his debut here against Marcelo Rojo, who is also looking for his first UFC win, going 0-2 so far. Rojo is an all-action striker, gets his fights into deep water super quickly, sometimes almost getting either knocked out or submitted before he finds the victory in a fight. That's going back to his Combate regional promotion days as well. And in the UFC, the guy has an early threat. He does fade late. I really do think that this will go over 1.5 rounds, just 7.5 minutes, because I think Francis Marshall wins with his wrestling, uses that as an easy weakness in the game of Marcelo Rojo. But that would mean that Marshall is grounding him, slowing him down, slowing the pace, and lasting until halfway into round 2. Not a lot to ask at this weight class, and I think it makes sense for the win condition of Francis Marshall. So the only way this loses is if Rojo gets the upset, a quick finish early, or if Marshall decides to level up, show some power in his hands we haven't seen, or really just dominate and get the back take and submission in round 1. I don't think it's very likely, so the over 1.5 at -165. I do have 1.5 units on that. Moving on to the last time prop, I have the under 2.5 rounds at -105. I put 1 unit on that. Matt Schnell, Mateusz Nicolau on the main card at flyweight 125. This is really partially a play. Again, Nicolau is a big favorite. Probably shouldn't be as big of a favorite as he is, but he's the better striker in this matchup, the more dangerous submission fighter in this matchup. Matt Schnell has got a questionable chin. He's been finished in 5 of his 7 losses, most of them at the UFC level. And when Matt Schnell does his best work, and this is in his whole career, it's usually in round 1. Usually getting, again, kind of like Valdez or Rojo, like we talked about, a fast starter in Matt Schnell, likes to get into a war early, take the fight to the ground, potentially look for the submission threat is what he's best at. But oftentimes he can get reversed or, ground and pounded out. You remember the Hector Sandoval fight where he got hammer-fisted to sleep in a very odd sequence. And even in Matt Schnell's last fight against Suma Derji, the guy just about died, got standing TKO'd before he got the amazing comeback victory. So durability is questionable. It cost this guy all of his wins. Mateusz Nicolau been a decision machine in the UFC so far, but he's also been finished in his only 2 losses, so it fits his losing condition in case he gets upset here. Again, I've also got, besides the under 2.5 for 1 unit, I also have 0.25 units apiece on Nicolau's KO at +275 and his inside the distance at +150. I think the clean striking of Nicolau will be better on display against Matt Schnell, who will give him opportunity to counter-strike with Matt Schnell's pace early, right? His aggressive pace in round 1. Nicolau will probably be able to pick him apart with that clean boxing. Stuff that he wasn't able to show against David Dvorak or Manel Kape. He was a little bit more hesitant against those guys. I think those guys are better competition than Matt Schnell. So this time I think Nicolau's going to have some confidence and a willing dance partner to get this job done inside the distance. Finally, my last prop on this card, my last bet on this card, kind of an odd one, right? I'm oddly confident in this one, but I do have 0.2 units on Tracy Cortez versus Amanda Ribas. Fight ends in split decision at +650. And this is a spot where I just think this fight is slated to go the distance, right? You've got 2 women here who are at women's flyweight 125. Cortez, not a big finisher. Pretty defensively sound so far, as she's only lost 1 time. And Amanda Ribas, who, she's got the ground game as well, but will she get reversed and smothered by Cortez is the question. Ribas has shown some, decent improvements to her striking, nothing that I don't think Cortez can handle. So the finishing threat just isn't there in this fight. The bookies know it, the fans know it, the betting market knows it. The over 2.5 is juiced to like -300 to -400, but I think it's going to be close. So if it's going to go to decision, you got one woman with the better striking and overall more well-rounded game. You've got the incredible wrestling of Tracy Cortez. I think it's going to be control time versus damage done, right? And who's got the most control time in this fight? It could be either woman at the end of it. It's just really going to be a coin toss. I think one judge will have Cortez, one judge will have Ribas, so one judge will be perving out the whole time, looking at these women in a way he probably shouldn't when judging a fight. So, I think it's going to be Cortez that comes out the victor in this one. but I'm not confident on betting that side. Just give me the small 0.2 unit sprinkle at plus 650. Fight ends in split decision. Some books offer that prop on its own. Some books just have, you could bet each woman, put a sprinkle on each woman to win by split decision, average it out minus the VIG. There you go. But yeah, so that pretty much wraps up all of the wide variety of bets I have so far. Now moving on to the progressive parlay that I have planned. I have one planned. So I do have the Kevin Holland RDA Kevin Holland RDA Jonathan Pierce 3-leg parlay at plus 175 for 2.5 units. Now I also do have planned to add a 5-leg parlay and a 7-leg parlay, in which I'll add it on the screen. I would add my 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th confident fighters on this card. I'd add Mateusz Nicolau and Mark Diakese for 0.75 units. I'd imagine that's around plus 318 odds as it stands right now. I'd also add on number 6, number 7 confident picks. I'd add Yasmin Hauergy, and I'd add Jack Hermansson for 0.25 units wagered on that 7-leg parlay. Totaling it now, it would be around plus 768 odds. I'm only going to play this 5 and 7 leg parlay. I've already played the 3-leg. I'd only play this 5 and 7 leg parlay if these fighters look good on the scales, nothing odd or out of the ordinary, and if they just make it to the scales. I don't want to put this in early and then, one of these fights gets dropped at this point. Now, this will be a spot where if everything came down to Kevin Holland in the main event to close out this 3, 5, and 7-leg parlay, I'd be looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 to 9 units profit total. I would hedge out at that point, probably put like 4 units on Stephen Thompson at plus 150, guarantee a profit on each side, and call it a day there, gaining profit. That's just how much respect I give Stephen Thompson in this bout. That's how I would play it. If I don't get to the 5 and 7-leg parlay, not going to hedge out. But again, I have not played those 5 and 7-leggers yet. Waiting for the weigh-ins to see if everything shakes out okay with the 15 fights. Now, at that point, if I play those, I'll probably be tempted to just go a 9, an 11, a 13, and a 15-leg parlay, but I would just put 0.1 units on each of those if I played it. My order of confidence, if you're curious for the rest of it, I already gave you Yasmin Hauergy as number 6, Hermansson as number 7, Emily Ducote, 8, Marshall, Rowe, Cortez, Levy, Guida, Pavlovich, and very least confident pick, number 15, Eric Anders, would be how I would pair those off and just put like 0.1 units on that, like, lottery ticket amount of money on that, just to see how far down we can make this PRP. But the main money makers are that 3-leg, the 5, and the 7 potentially. So without further ado, let's wrap this video up. Usually longer than I make most of these best bets and props videos, but it's a big card, a lot of fun betting spots, and a lot of variety of action here. So again, hit the like, hit the subscribe, check out the full card breakdown and stream I did with Cody if you want additional details. And I will talk to you guys next time on Sunday for the recap of UFC Orlando. Good luck on all of your betting action. Sound off in the comments below some of your better betting spots. I'd love to hear it. And I'll talk to you guys very soon. Cheers.